What's up, Facebook? We're here with actor and activist Kendrick Sampson. He just got back from North Dakota, where he was protesting against the North Dakota Access Pipeline with the Standing Rock tribe and other protesters.
They're fighting for a human right just to have clean water. That's not something you should have to fight for.
We're going to talk to him about his experiences. First of all, thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad you're alive and well.
I'm glad I'm alive too.
Yes, because we've been covering it extensively. Jordan's down there. We had Taylor go down from the studio. The images that come back are absolutely horrific. Not a lot of people are aware of it because aside from us and a couple other independent outlets online, there's not a lot of mainstream media coverage around it.
Yeah. And
why do you think that is?
I mean, they've done a really good job of suppressing the media down there. They believe that this plane that flies around 24/7, literally 24/7, every time it flies over your, say you're on Facebook or something like that, your service goes out. It's definitely there for surveillance. There's been a no-fly zone issued over the area, which was specifically for the drones that they were flying around.
Yeah.
The police actually took shots at and shot down one of their drones, which is illegal. But they issued a no-fly zone, but for some reason there's an exception for this plane that I thought when I got there, oh, maybe they're exaggerating, this plane just keeps flying back and forth. But then when the sun comes up, you can see that it's just flying in circles around the area. They've arrested some of the media that have gone out there, famously Amy Goodman, several other smaller outlets. And the other day, they were shooting rubber bullets and they hit Erin Schrody in the back.
In the middle of an interview. To be fair, she was obviously being civilly disobedient. She obviously had a gun or something, right? There must have been a justification for why a reporter would get shot in the middle of the interview. Now, you mentioned something about people that are helping other people out there, like medics. Being arrested. Don't hold back. Give us everything, like your account of all the experiences.
I mean,
you've seen.
When I was there with Aaron and Josh Fox and all these people, and we were on the other bank. So the action that day was for some of the natives and some of the other water protectors, allies that have taken camp on the Standing Rock Reservation in Cannonball, went to the water to pray, to have ceremony at the water. And went into the water, waist deep into the Missouri River, and were greeted by the police and military, people in fatigues with military-grade rifles, automatic weapons, rubber bullets, mace, and these are like extinguisher-sized cans of mace. Yeah. And the police were literally taunting them. They didn't have to do anything. These are unarmed water protectors in the water with their hands up, with signs, nothing threatening in the least bit. If you're in freezing cold water waist deep anyway, you're not a threat. They were mostly worried about, staying warm and praying, and they were greeted by mace and, rubber bullets. And when we got there was this one trigger-happy guy, and I'm like, that's gonna be the one. And, 20 minutes later, less than 20 minutes later, he was shooting at people, and that was one of the bullets that hit Aaron, all the way on the other side of the river. There were people hiding out in fatigues and helmets, and it looked like a war zone. And then on the side, and snipers up on the hill, and then there was a boat, a gaming boat with 7 military, what looked like soldiers on the boat coming back and forth. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe that every few seconds they would just go up to the water protectors in the water and just spray them with mace for no reason. I've recorded it. You could see it on some of my personal videos on my social media. After it was over, we had to rush back to the casino, 10 miles down the road so that we could have some sort of service to upload them. So that's another reason that it's really hard. Media can't go there, one, because they'll be shot or hurt. The other is because there's no service.
Yeah, you talked about suppression of the media. Now, to give you guys some numbers, there's been arrests in the hundreds and use of pepper spray. Hundreds of people are injured in the process. Now, the state is planning to borrow $4 million to cover the cost of policing the protests against the pipeline. Obviously, there's also the Sacred Stone Legal Defense Fund. It's almost nearing its crowdfunding goals. What I want to talk more about is suppression of the press, because you mentioned that there were accounts of people mentioning that they had rooms bugged. Yeah. My understanding is that they had booked out all the hotels in like a 10-mile area for the Dakota Access Pipeline security forces, but then also in an effort to make sure that it was as difficult as possible for people to go down there to protest or even cover the events.
Yeah.
What do you think that says about freedom of the press in the United States?
I mean, they're protecting big money. Money is first, and then freedom is second. If there is any true freedom in the way that the way that America is protecting, I keep saying that, like, you protect the right to throw someone out of your store. It's commercialism, this whole thing.
Yeah.
You protect the right to refuse service for somebody who, because of who they love, because of what they believe, because of the way they look. Yet this community cannot throw somebody out of their community when this community and surrounding communities have agreed that this will poison one of the largest water sources in America, a water source to 16 to 17 million people. But there's a lot of money behind this pipeline, so you protect money first. The government has protected money first with, like, Citizens United and all this kind of stuff, which effectively, suppresses the media, because anyone who wants to cover what's really happening in America, what's really happening at Standing Rock, the police brutality, the environmental racism, they are suppressed because big money corporations don't want to be exposed. They've made it even harder by blocking major roadways, putting tanks and, Humvees and
like military grade equipment used in war zones that are now in the hands of local authorities because of military surplus programs. We now see why they needed that. Well, why do small townships need these military grade equipment? And now we see it because they want to use it against the citizens in instances of civil disobedience.
If you ride a horse towards us, they will be met with less lethal.
There's two things I want to talk about. First of all, the ETP, which is the Energy Transfer Partners, announced this back in 2014. Now, originally their plans were to go near Bismarck, and obviously there was a lot of backlash for it, and that's why we're currently in North Dakota, like the area between North Dakota and South Dakota. That's why they decided, well, probably the indigenous people won't have, like, they can either be bought off or the people won't really care if we do this. And even if the Native Americans in that territory, like the Sioux people, if they protest against this, it'll be, the backlash won't be as strong. Now, they were wrong, and mostly they were wrong in part due to, like, people like Amy Goodman going out there and exposing that the security forces down there were using attack dogs.
Yeah.
Like, doing things that are just completely illegal and going against the very Constitution that we consistently talk about how we uphold it. Now, one thing I wanted to ask you, how does this treatment of the indigenous people down there fare when they don't have weapons, they don't have anything in their hands, they're just civilly protesting? Granted, they are trespassing on public property that has been given to this company now, this private corporation. But how does that fare when compared to the Bundy militia in Oregon that took over a wildlife sanctuary? They had arsenal. They had a heavy arsenal. They had so many weapons.
If they stop you from getting here, kill them!
It was very threatening, and yet they were let off. And we see hundreds of people being arrested in North Dakota. What do you think the reason for that is? Now, this is almost a rhetorical question at this point.
In my opinion, it's the whole concept of Black Lives Matter. People of color tend to matter less. It's based on income a lot of the time, but it's also based on the color of their skin. Historically, we have betrayed treaties with the Native people in this country over and over and over again. This is a prime example. That is sacred land. That is Sioux territory. That is, Hunkpapa Lakota territory. We pushed back the lines of terrible land that we gave them and took away all of the beautiful land that they were owed, and now we're pushing back on that even further and saying that they matter less because of their income, because of the color of their skin. Over and over we see it, if white people go and riot in the streets because they won a hockey game, they're seen as just like overexcited sports fans. But if black people or Native people go out and peacefully protest in the streets or protect their own water source, they're seen as scary thugs and criminals. And they used to paint Native people as these scary individuals for propaganda purposes, to say that they will hurt you. They've even did radio shows out there where they were saying that they were They were preparing to attack people with bow and arrows, and like, I'm dead serious. There are these racist shows that come on in the morning in Bismarck and the surrounding areas that paint these people as criminals, and you go out there and you're like, they're peacefully protesting and holding ceremonies, like I told you, like the Sweat Lodge. And
that's actually one thing that's another thing I wanted to ask you about. So you attended one of their ceremonies. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, there's this beautiful ceremony, the Sweat Lodge, where you sweat with these native people. I mean, well, they do it in tradition. And it's a ceremony where what they call doors. They build this structure, very small structure, and you go in, you sit in this lodge, this sweat lodge basically, and they bring rocks in, these hot rocks, and they throw water on it, and it creates this steam room, this sauna. It's this amazing spiritual experience. I haven't experienced anything like it, where it brings you closer to your Creator, closer to God. The spiritual aspect of it is incredible. And in there, I was brought to tears in the third door, because I was thinking about, these people are in there praying for the cops, praying for the DAPL workers, even though they are threatening to poison their land and bringing the cops in and brutalizing them, breaking their arms and such, some of the youth that they've tortured. And yet they're sitting there praying for these people. And to imagine that just a few days before I got there, they destroyed one of their sweat lodges as they were praying and pulled them out. Some of the police pulled them out violently. And to think about that, to be in that sacred space, in that ceremonial space, and you're yanked out of there. There's nothing negative in that space. No negative thoughts or anything.
It's provocation.
Yeah, it's provocation in the worst way possible.
And hey, white people, you like saunas, maybe give it a shot. You know what I mean? You never know. Then you'll be one of those people that goes, oh, you're not like the others, which is like the classic racist term of like, oh, wait a minute, I just actually had an experience with someone for the first time ever, and I realize that they are humans as well, because currently they're being treated like less
than human.
Yeah, like savages.
That was one thing during one of the protests last week. They, broke this girl's arm. One of the international indigenous youth, I met all of them. They ran all the way to D.C. to go to the White House and request an audience with the president, and ran all the way back, and only to be greeted with mace and abuse, brutalization. Two of the girls, they threw into dog kennels because they were holding them not in cells, but in large-sized dog kennels.
And we've heard about accounts of strip searching, and
they put them in those overnight in those kennels naked. Didn't read anyone their rights. This is a human rights catastrophe out there. That is, and numbered them, wrote numbers on their arms. That is the epitome of dehumanization. Not only do they break up their ceremonies and their offerings, they brutalize them, they dehumanize them, write numbers and throw them in dog kennels.
That's completely unacceptable and horrific, and it's very hard for people to imagine that this is happening in the United States, because you live in places like even Texas or California or New York, and you're so far away from the conflict, and it's really difficult to understand exactly what these people are going through. And then you also hear instances like in Flint, in Louisiana, like you mentioned earlier, like there's so many different places where the water supply is completely contaminated. And this is what the Sioux people are actually fighting for. They're trying to keep their water pure. The water has a sacred and also just a human right, like a basic human right to that water. Things like Yellowstone, like the leak in Yellowstone, these leaks occur pretty frequently and completely ruin water supplies. They contaminate it all over the country. So that's, like I mentioned, that's the reason why they didn't want it to go through Bismarck to begin with, because they thought that was too much of a threat for millions of people's water. The thing I wanted to ask you, aside from all that, like, is there any justification for the brutal treatment that you guys and everyone else that's protesting out there that has received from military forces, from the police, from the private security forces there? Because on their end, they assume that they're just doing this because they're protecting this private land that was given to the company that they're working for, especially in the cases of local authorities. What justification do they have? Because they make it seem like the protesters are not so peaceful. They make it seem like they're throwing rocks. Now, it's disproportionate even if that was the case. I wanted to hear your accounts on it. Like, have you seen anything from the protesters' side at all that would provoke police into taking action? I mean, it's not carte blanche it would never give them carte blanche to, like, shoot at
I would say, so personally,
civilians.
personally, I have not heard any accounts of them having weapons. I have not heard any accounts of them attacking police officers. But even if someone gets mad and provokes a police officer and you don't have any weapons, or even if they did have, I don't know, a water bottle or something like that to throw at the police officers, they have riot gear and automatic rifles and tanks, and it's completely disproportionate. There are ways to de-escalate that they are not taking. They are only escalating. They have taken no measures to de-escalate. One side is worried about protecting the water, the other side is worried about protecting corporate interests, money. And from what I understand, this land has been illegally obtained. You're supposed to declare in North Dakota what you're using, why you're buying land. Because it is a farming state, you're supposed to declare what you're using this land for. In their public declarations, they still have not declared what they're using the land for, which means they just bought it specifically for this pipeline. That specifically is just bordering their land.
And affecting the land that they live on if the water supply is contaminated.
It's not just the natives that are protesting this land, it's all the communities surrounding there. There's a very high statistic of problematic issues with any of these pipelines.
Yeah, and they've mentioned that they will be around the clock, 24/7, 7 days a week, surveilling the pipeline itself in an effort to make sure that there are no leaks, there's nothing that's hazardous to the community and the environment itself. However, these instances still do happen under human error, even under human watch.
To that point, they've expedited the process and started building 24/7.
Which is one of the reasons why they moved the protests directly to the river, right?
Because they're less than a mile, they're 0.25 miles or something from the river, which, you know, is very scary. But I also, in that expediting the process, I wonder how much attention they're paying to, you know, securing that pipeline in the best way possible.
It's just awful when corporate interests overall, just because they have more money or because they're better connected to the politicians that allow them this land, takes precedent over citizens that have been living there. They have a sacred and also natural right to the resources of that land. And then on top of that, when they should be protected by the same Constitution to protest this, and yet they're met with brute force. It's really terrible. That's kind of all the time we have for today. I really thank you so much.